Welcome to NFL Daily, where we have the rare dueling I can fix 'em trade to talk about tonight. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in my garage for the last time during this preseason with my good friend Nick Shook. Before the show, I just said, Nick, aren't you feeling a little sentimental? Last time we're going to do this on a preseason Sunday, and you said?
No, let's get to week one already.
Yeah, I think you're speaking for most of the football populace, and we're right there. Cuts have already started. As we are taping this, we are less than 48 hours away from the cuts being due all around the league. We are, 11 days away from the kickoff game. It is all happening now. Preseason is over. Training camp practice is over. All the access is over, and now we've got some funky trades that I alluded to. So let's just start there. So the process here, Nick, because, preseason week 3, not many teams play a lot of starters, although some did. We're going to go through each game just to kind of organize it, but we'll just give some takeaways from these teams, whether it was related to that game or more likely from the preseason or the last week as a whole. We will hit all 32 teams, and we'll go in reverse order, roughly, of when they finished, except for Eagles-Jets. We're just going to start there because we had a Carson Wentz-related quarterback trade in the year 2025. Sam Howell is going to the Eagles, Nick, so that the Vikings, who had Sam Howell, for those scoring at home, can sign Carson Wentz to be their backup quarterback. Let's start talking about it from the Eagles side of things. What did you think of them bringing in Sam Howell, which was ultimately like a late round pick swap and like a 6th ultimately, or a 7th that they give up to get Sam Howell?
Well, for a team like the Eagles, who don't need to find out that much in preseason, one of the things that they discovered, or at least were reminded of, is that they love Tanner McKee as a backup. But then Tanner McKee suffered a fractured thumb in the game, and suddenly they had Kyle McCord as their only remaining option. Oof. This is right after they saw a bunch of Kyle McCord in their game against the Jets and probably didn't like what they saw very much. So that prompts them to go make a move for Sam Howell, who started the preseason and played really well for the Vikings. But the Vikings are looking to move on because they love Max Brosmer and they need to find a spot on the roster for him. So it's a win-win in theory, except then they go sign Carson Wentz because they also know that they need a veteran behind J.J. McCarthy since they lose the veteran presence in Howell. So the carousel turns. You got to put the pieces together. There's a lot of different things involved, but that's the way I see it.
I don't know if win-win, no disrespect to where Carson Wentz is at this point of his career, or Sam Howell, who now 3 teams have given up on in the last 3 years, would be the way I'd exactly describe it. How about just like, well, better than we were a couple hours ago. I feel a little better. That's fine.
I mean,
that's all you can ask for.
You just go with the push.
Yeah, push is fine. So Sam Howell has played some of his very best football against the Eagles. I was wondering, did I remember this right? He had some great games for Washington against them. And I looked, and it's like they've seen him play well, and it sounds like Tanner McKee, who's, I believe, one of the best backups in the league, not going to be ready for week 1. And like you mentioned, no real option there. Carson Wentz is interesting. We do the show, I can fix him, and to me, he is the ultimate I can fix him. Jordan Rodriguez trademark there. But Andy Reid was not able to fix him last year with the Chiefs. Not that we really saw him too much, but they weren't really that interested in keeping him. We'll get to the rest of the Vikings in a bit, but I'm glad you mentioned Max Brosmer. I don't think they will cut him and subject him to waivers because he played well enough in the preseason. So if they had to play a game, if for some reason J.J. McCarthy gets hurt, I would guess Carson Wentz is going to be the backup to start the season, just like Sam Howell will be the backup for the Eagles. And yeah, you mentioned Kyle McCord, their 6th round pick. All right, let's go Eagles-Jets a little bit. Man, this was a pointless game. So I don't know if you have any takeaways, probably not from the game, but anything from either of these teams that strikes your fancy.
I mean, game specifically, like I said, I don't think the Eagles liked what they saw from Kyle McCord very much. I saw John Mechie out there, recent acquisition via trade, and I'm like, there's John Mechie. And then I'm like, oh, wait, where's John Mechie? He had 1 catch for 14 yards. Yeah, very much a pointless game. Adrian Martinez, who ends up getting cut by the Jets, played the second half of this game for New York. It felt very much like nobody of note is playing in this game. No. And these are the guys who are probably on the bubble, are probably going to get cut. This is their last chance. So not a lot to take away from a preseason that, look, you're the defending champ. You don't really need to discover all that much. The only area of concern is the turnover that you had on your defensive front, which I'm sure they feel comfortable enough with going into the season that they'll be fine. So, and the Jets, I mean, we didn't get to see Justin Fields in this game. I flipped it on and I was like, there's no Fields. Well, now what am I going to learn from this game?
Nothing, really. Other than Keely Ringo, I think, has fallen down the depth chart enough that he was playing, and Adoree Jackson was not. It looks like it's Adoree Jackson to be the starter. If I was thinking like larger picture Eagles, they tried Cooper DeJean out at some outside corner snaps last week during practice. That's interesting. I think that's a break, in case of emergency type of deal. They're not going to start the season that way. I think he'll be in the slot, a little bit of safety. And going back to really the start of this whole month, it's still such a big win that Jahad Campbell had such a great, healthy month. And I think he is a starter for this team. So that is outstanding. They were not expecting him necessarily when they drafted him to be a starter right away. Their first-round pick, him next to Zach Bond, is really exciting. And they have a young receiver they really like in Darius Cooper, so it's someone to watch there. For the Jets, I think Armand Membu, really good first preseason week. The next couple were a little spottier. We'll see. I'm not going to draw too much from the preseason. And they never really did find a second receiver. Very uncertain whether Alan Lazard and Malachi Corley, for instance, make this team. Let's go to the 49ers and the Chargers, Nick. And I moved this one up just like slightly in the order because another trade. Brian Robinson, we haven't hit this deal on the podcast, is a member of the San Francisco 49ers. Not only that, Nick, Kyle Shanahan immediately announced we needed a better backup quarterback. So he does not have to battle for that job with whoever's there, like Isaac Guerrero. It will be Brian Robinson's job. They gave up a 6th-round pick for the Commanders' leading rusher from a year ago. What do you think?
This all started with Washington kind of treating this strangely in that they didn't, have Brian Robinson even dressed for their second preseason game. He sat out, and I don't even know if he was in attendance at the game itself. And so the writing was on the wall. They were trying to move him, and rather expeditiously, considering he's in the last year of his rookie contract. He's, if the story of how he came to the NFL. He gets shot in an attempted carjacking. He misses the first month, comes back in week 5. Has a productive, first few years, but he's not the most efficient running back. You look at his yards per carry, it's over 4, but when you watch him on a carry-by-carry basis, it's just not really there. But he is a bigger, powerful back, and that's what the 49ers lacked behind Christian McCaffrey. Guerrero is a home run hitter type. He's not a guy that you're necessarily going to trust in goal line situations or short yardage situations, and you don't want to bang up McCaffrey a bunch considering he came off of an injury last year. And you think it's kind of an I can fix him trade again, because if you think, well, all right, Robinson not super productive in Washington, where he had fallen out of favor to Austin Eckler a little bit last year, and they tried different guys there over the last few years, even with their regime changes. But in Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is very creative in how they run block. And in some years, they block really well. They've elevated and propelled no-names to stardom in the past. Maybe he can fix him. And if he admitted that he needed a better back behind McCaffrey, why not capitalize with a very low cost in a trade?
Yeah, I've never been in love with Brian Robinson's running at an NFL level. Just to me, he's just a solid player. But I do love, from a fantasy perspective, that Kyle Shanahan seems to love him, that he's just a simple, straight-ahead runner. He's putting him number 2. Guerrero, by the way, came back last week from an injury and then hurt his shoulder again in the preseason game. So they are so banged up. Robinson's the only healthy one behind McCaffrey at this point. The wide receivers are even more banged up. Juwan Jennings, they believe will be ready for week 1 health-wise, but we don't know what the contract situation is. So right now, in terms of healthy wide receivers, it is very possible the wide receiver 2 behind Ricky Pearsall is Sky Moore, acquired a couple days ago. Now, they're going to get these guys back, whether it's Jordan Watkins, the rookie, or Jacob Cowing, who hurt his hamstring again, or Demarcus Robinson off a suspension. They will get these guys back, but it's crazy. I think they'll get Jennings signed ultimately, but it's crazy right now. Like, they could be running like a 3-wide receiver set week 1 if nothing changed, with Sky Moore and Robbie Chosen out there.
I'm also curious, like, how long did Jennings feel like this about his contract, or was it one of those things where he looked around and he's like, God, we have so many guys banged up. Maybe now's the time to cash in.
Right. They really do need him.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. It's been reported he wants more than $20 million. Like, to me, he would fit in pretty well in the $15 million range.
Yes.
So, give him a little bump for this year. Just make him happy. The 49ers, we mentioned, they're going to have a couple of rookies starting for this team. Marcus Sigley, their safety at day 3 pick, could be starting. And Upton Stout is supposed to return to practice this week. So is their first-round pick, Michael Williams. So that's good. On the Chargers side of things, nothing, again, from the game. It's like we're deep into the third stringers. But Trey Lance has definitely won this backup battle over Heineke. I think we can say that. And as we get closer to the season, Shook, it looks like Haskins has won the RB2 battle. Hassan Haskins, right? And I just don't know if Najee Harris is going to be on this roster on Tuesday. Not that they would cut him, but I mean the active roster. I would imagine he's going to the NFI list, non-football injury list, and that would knock him out for 4 weeks because there's just been no sign that he's getting any better as we get closer to week 1. Like, this is the time. Just the timeline is you have to make these sort of decisions now, whether you're going to put him on the shelf for 4 weeks or you think he's going to be back soon enough.
Yep, and considering that his injury took place in a non-football incident, that's why he would land on NFI and would clear the way for them to do that. Yeah, I can't imagine they would take up a roster spot with a guy that just doesn't seem like he's ready. And if you even watch their preseason action over the last few weeks, really going back to the Hall of Fame game, they've been trying a number of different running backs. Nyheim, formerly known as Nyheim Hines, but now Nyheim Miller Hines, has gotten a decent amount of work throughout the preseason. I don't think he's going to make the final roster, but like they've been trying out different guys to figure it out.
Kamani Vidal should make this team, but I don't think he's the backup. We don't really know who's the backup. We'll find out. I don't think you need to worry about it for fantasy leagues. They never really solved their cornerback battle. They have 4 guys all battling. I don't think it matters that much. They're all going to play. A couple of the second-year guys in Benjamin St. Juste and Dante Jackson, who are free agent pickups. I've been curious to see that Michigan pick, Junior Colson of Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines. Everyone was like, "Oh, he's the type of guy that steps in day one." I'm not sure he's going to make this team, but he's definitely not playing much. And of course, if you're just tuning in, Rashawn Slater, their left tackle, is out for the season, and that was really the biggest injury loss any team had all preseason. That's the negative. The positive is their rookie receivers did really seem to rise as the preseason went along. Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris. Let's go to Cardinals Raiders. Big battle between Clayton Tune and who else was out there? Who's the third string for the Raiders? I'm forgetting. Cam Miller. Cam Miller it is. And they might need Cam Miller, Shook, because Aiden O'Connell got hurt in this game and is out 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, not great. Not great. It's a bummer because this is the guy that we accurately said last year has carved out a place as like an 8 to 10 year backup in the NFL. And you felt pretty good about this group going into the season with Geno with the ones and AOC behind him, and now you don't have him. So it is a weakness, but you hope that Geno is able to stay on the field. If you think in the years past with Geno with the Seahawks, even when he got banged up, he usually found a way to stay on the field, even if he wasn't 100%. So I'm not going to be super concerned about it, but yeah, maybe they will need Cam Miller with a team that, frankly, I think was very fun to watch throughout the preseason, and especially fun in this game. Like, yeah, in some of these games, they weren't playing against the starting defense, but the Geno Smith offense and the Ashton Jeanty offense, it's fun to watch. And Jeanty, ran hard again in the brief time that he was out on the field against the Cardinals. And look, I'm excited about Raiders football this season, even if you're a little bit thinner at quarterback. And this game provided us with another great highlight. Yes,
Geno Smith throwing the ball to Dante Thornton. If you are watching on the YouTube, we appreciate you, and you can see this dime by Geno, and it was one of 2 throws to Thornton in this one drive that the starters played, and they scored on the Cardinals backups right away, where Thornton created no separation whatsoever, but Geno just fires it in there into a tiny window, and Thornton got both grabs, like hand catches, and this just made me think he's going to be confident going to this kid. So that was one of the bigger stories, I think, from the Raiders preseason, that the 4th round pick Thornton earned a starting job. And, the 2nd round pick Jack Besh, I don't think is going to be playing much earlier, or at least early in the season. So we'll see. Pete Carroll did say, Shook, that he wants a veteran quarterback in there. Now, Chip Kelly's familiar with DTR, who got cut by the Eagles. Should have mentioned that when we talked Philadelphia. Was his quarterback at UCLA. That's a guy who's played in the NFL. He would come for free. I don't know if they'll aim higher for like a 1-month backup job. We'll see. You're making a face
I don't like the idea of bringing in DTR as somebody who has experience because the DTR I knew before the Browns traded him away had regressed, and he looked like the same DTR with the Eagles when he played in the preseason this year, which is why they cut him after acquiring him via trade. So that doesn't feel like much of a solution, but I understand the connection there, and
there
if
is
it happens,
a connection.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Right, but you only have so many roster spots. So, do you want to keep him over Cam Miller? Probably not. They'll maybe look for a veteran somewhere. I really struggled to find much Cardinals. Certainly out of this game, really, the most interesting news for them came early with injuries. They lost a couple of their cornerbacks early, Starling Thomas, Sean Murphy-Bunting, but I still think they're deep enough there for now. And then Walter Nolan, someone we haven't mentioned in about a month, their first-round pick, started camp with an injury and does not seem that close to returning, so he could start the year on IR. Jordan Rodriguez and I are going to hit all the transactions on Tuesday, so no sense previewing that too much, but they do have a couple injured defensive linemen where I'm wondering if they're going to stash them or not. The Bills and the Buccaneers played a football game this week. Josh Allen did not play any preseason for the first time in his career, but they did have some players out there obviously in practice this week, and Tre'Davious White, actually their starting cornerback, got hurt in practice, and they must really not like Rasul Douglas because, man, they need a cornerback badly, and they have not called that dude, and they're short on Maxwell Hairston. I would really recommend people check out the podcast that dropped in the feed over the weekend. It was really great, doing it on the future of defense with Mr. Match Quarters, Cody Alexander, and Jordan Rodriguez. And it was great, but we talked a lot about the Bills defense there. I don't want to repeat myself, but I don't think they're happy at safety. I don't know if Dane Jackson even makes this team. There's just a lot of questions. They're a team that's really good that I think could be very active over the next few weeks. A lot of times it's the bad teams that are claiming guys and making trades. I think the Bills could be looking for some guys that actually play snaps for them.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the cornerback market and what's available. Because, look, this is no hate on Tre'Davious White, but he is not who he was when he was in Buffalo the first time. He just isn't. He's had multiple injuries over the last few years. He's bounced around from the Rams to the Ravens and now back in Buffalo. And you weren't counting on him as being one of your starters. You were hoping it was going to be Maxwell Hairston, who got hurt early in camp. And so you needed Tre'Davious White. But if you were going to go into the season with him as one of your starters, that's not really the best look.
Did you see the clip of him on Hard Knocks squeezing out the sweat from his socks?
Yes.
It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life.
We had both ends of the spectrum. We had him trying to get a custom ice cream dish at a local ice cream parlor made, and then we had squeezing out the socks. That's the Tre'Davious White camp experience. But I just think about the quarterback market, and I'm like, well, what else is really going to be out there? So it's going to be fascinating to see if somebody else comes available from a team that just has a surplus, and the Bills are, maybe find a way to jump on it. But yeah, I don't think they're done there at all, because even if you look at in 2 years ago, it was the story of their defense was like, we know what we have in our safeties. We have Matt Milano. Everybody else around them, we drafted Greg Rousseau. We hope he gets there. The conversation has since shifted to we like our front seven more, and we really don't know about our secondary anymore. We drafted Cole Bishop last year. He kind of struggled to stay on the field. Now he's going to be one of our starters. And then you think about the cornerback situation, and you're right about Rasul Douglas. You're right. They must hate him because he's a good veteran cornerback. He was with them last year, not with the team.
He didn't play well. I agree with that assessment, and no one else has signed him. Maybe he wants too much money. Maybe he's ready to go. How about a little Stephon Gilmore reunion? I don't think that his tenure ended well.
No.
He's still out there. They are a rare team, when I was looking through the rosters, that actually has a lot of tackles, offensive tackles. So maybe they could make a trade of one of their depth guys. Just there are almost no teams that have extra offensive linemen, but they might. The Bucs certainly don't have extras because they're short Tristan Wirfs early in the season. I thought Tez Johnson had a really good game. I think he's done enough to make the team. Shiloh Sanders, Deion Sanders' son, got ejected for being in a fight on Saturday, then was cut on Sunday, but he might end up on the practice squad. I don't think he got cut because he was ejected. It's just the time of year that guys like him get cut. We'll see. And then I did hear pewterreport.com. I was reading that, or no, rather it was Joe Bucks fan. Give a shout out to him. Said Rondé Barber on the broadcast said there's a Teddy Bridgewater, Kyle Trask quarterback controversy right now for backup. So that's the best I could give you for a Bucks nugget.
Well, I mean, Trask went 13 for 17 this game. But when the Kyle Trask experience is like hanging on the edge of your seat the whole time because you just don't know where it's going to go. I would imagine if you're really a contender, you probably lean on Teddy being your backup. Trask has been the backup who's lingered in the shadows since the final year of Tom Brady and has luckily never had to really see the field for them. You're right. It was a bad day to be a Sanders, by the way. Saturday was, considering we haven't gotten to it.
We'll get to it. We're not going to leave with
Oh, cool backflip by Tez Johnson, by the way, after he scored. That was awesome.
That was awesome. Jason Light, by the way, had some comments about Hassan Reddick last week. Jason Light's their general manager. That just gave me some optimism about Hassan Reddick. I think they're really happy with what they've seen out of him as a leader and on the field, and him talking about already maybe this can turn into a long-term partnership, Reddick and the Bucs. And I was like, ooh, if they get the good Hassan Reddick, that would be really good for them. Reminds me a little bit of when they got Jason Pierre-Paul, when most of the NFL probably thought he was really on the downturn, and they got some great years out of him, and it really helped. They had their rookies, Jacob Parrish at cornerback and Emeka Egbuka, have two of the best preseasons of any rookie tandem too, so that's great for the Bucs. Let's talk Dolphins Jags. Hey, they showed up, the Miami Dolphins. I give anyone credit that gave me something to watch. The Miami Dolphins played their starters. It was kind of sad because the offense still struggled against the Jaguars backups. You hate when that happens. The defense, not so much. The defense was amazing against John Wolford and the third string Jaguars offense, which you would expect. But I got excited, Shook, because I think it was the first play of the game, they had Zach Sealer, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Chop Robinson all on the field together at the same time. They actually had Benito Jones, too, as like a run stuffer, which is like, whoa, that is an insane amount of pass rush on the field at the same time. And it's like, wait, how did you even do that? And so I rewound it, and they got Jalen Phillips actually lining up over the slot receiver, which is insane, like a 280-pound, 6'4" guy or whatever he is lining up over the slot receiver. But he just rushed. They all just rushed, and they got a sack. And those guys dominated the Jaguars backups, as you would expect. But it's been so negative about the Dolphins all camp. I got to say, they have a chance, if everything broke right, to be an elite defensive front, like one of the best in the entire NFL.
Yeah, we spent a good amount of time worrying about their secondary earlier in this preseason, and
Still
rightfully
worried.
so. Yeah, rightfully so. But you're right. You want to put Jalen Phillips in the widest 9 in the history of football to get after the quarterback by all means. Like, they've invested so much in that area over the last 4 years. It started with Bradley Chubb. It continued with Phillips. It continued with Robinson, who they drafted after Phillips suffered a season-ending injury. And now they've got all those guys available. That might be the only way that they're, competitive on the defensive side of the ball, because of our concerns in the secondary. And it might be what might prove to be a strength, like you said. And then suddenly we're like, wait a minute. We're not talking about Mike McDaniel's offense. We're talking about this incredible pass rush that comes from Miami. It's like Saxonville 2.0, except it's in a different part of Florida.
And Anthony Weaver, who we had on NFL Daily last year, who was great, year 2 of that Ravens scheme. I think he's a good coach. Do they have some creativity? They have this day 3 rookie defensive tackle named Jordan Phillips, not to be confused with the veteran Jordan Phillips, who, by the way, is signing with the Bills and has been in the NFL a long time. But Jordan Phillips, more of like a plugger up front. And the guys at the read optional had a long segment about them, so I want to give them credit for pointing him out. And then I watched him in this game, and he's had a great preseason where he looks like a find. And Kenneth Grant has looked good, too, at defensive tackle. So just a lot of numbers there. We'll see if it works. On the flip side, Tua and the offense looked pretty rough against the backups. They didn't score for, I think it was a drive or two, and then it was 4th and 6, like on their side of the field, and McDaniel just let them out there. I think it was their third drive, and he's like, we got to get something going. And to Tua's credit, he hits a 4th and 6 when the other team, the Jaguars, send a blitz, and then they end up having a good rest of the drive and get a touchdown and at least leave on a positive note. But I was checking out the joint practice reports, Shook. You know how I like to score joint practice wins and losses?
Oh, yeah.
I think the Dolphins, first of all, they're the only team, I think, that had 3 joint practices, but they're definitely the only team that went 0-3 in joint practices. It sounds like the Jaguars won their joint practice, so that's bad. I think that's why Tua might have been out there. Like, it just hasn't looked good.
Yeah, but here's the question: did it progress? Did they at least like improve from joint practice session like week to week? Because the first one was really bad,
Yes.
and then the second one, like it was 3 interceptions for Tua. I think it was against the Bears, and then the next one was like, well, he didn't throw any interceptions this time, so we're making some progress. And like you had Tua on record saying like, oh, I don't grade myself. I don't need to do that. That's for you guys to do. But I think we're steadily improving. So maybe it's just a lower starting point for this team this year in what's going to be a high-pressure season. But if their defense plays well, which, by the way, we didn't even mention, Matthew Judon's also in that pass rushing group. They added him last week. So if they become a defensive team, then maybe we don't need to lean on this offense as much, and we don't have to worry about it as much. But I caution against just blindly believing that going into the season.
For context, Devon Achane is out hurt. We'll see if he's ready for week 1. Tyreek Hill hasn't been practicing for a couple weeks now. So, yeah, the Dolphins' offense is going to stink if Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane aren't on the field. Like, we know that. Their rookie running back, Ollie Gordon, I thought looked better this week. I know he's looked pretty good in general, but he looked really good, again, against second and third stringers, but bouncing off of guys. And Jalen Wright, their backup running back, is hurt. So Ollie Gordon might be getting some snaps early in this season. For the Jags, yeah, they didn't play their starters, so there wasn't much there. Our friend John Shipley reports that they are looking to possibly deal Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne, probably one or the other. The offensive line in the joint practice reportedly did not play really that well, but the defense played well, as we kind of mentioned, against Miami. And Travis Hunter's been out of team drills now for like a week and a half. I'm still buying him in fantasy. I don't care that he's going as wide receiver 35. I think people are sleeping on a major talent here. I just don't see the gap between him and Brian Thomas Jr. being that great once we get to like November or December.
Well, especially because there was that period earlier in the preseason when Brian Thomas Jr. was struggling with drops. So, it's not something that I would say is a serious concern, but if you're weighing the two, yeah, maybe you do invest in Travis Hunter in fantasy, and especially if you're in an IDP league. Because I don't know if you can, but I would imagine you might be able to use him on both sides. Who knows? I'm not sure.
Yes, I think so. And the Jaguars, by the way, have Arik Armstead back in the mix. And he reportedly had a great day in that joint practice. So he is fully healthy. And they could be a good front with Josh Hines-Allen, and Travon Walker now has improved if Armstead really gives them something. All right, let's give the people something to think about while we take a break and we come back and we are cranking through every single team and their final preseason takeaways. Back in a minute. Back on NFL Daily, Packers and Seahawks played a game in which Jalen Milroe played a lot and did not look good. But I'm more interested in Shook in a real deal fight at joint practice. It took to the very last day of training camp for two teams to really get after it. Multiple players say that was the worst fight they've ever seen, that they've been involved in at a training camp. Zach Tom, the Packers tackle, got kicked out, but apparently a whole lot of people could have gotten kicked out. I am curious, was anyone dumb enough to ever get in a fight with Shooky at a football practice?
I was a late bloomer, so I wasn't as large in stature maybe as I am now. So I wasn't as intimidating, but yes, at least 2 fights I got into back in the day. One I clearly won. The other one was kind of a draw, and then I had to run a mile with my pads and helmet on as punishment. So kind of wasn't worth it.
How, can you just jog it, or are you supposed to go kind of fast?
No, you're jogging it, but in fact, I believe I had to run that one with a 50-pound blocking dummy over my back. So you had to run it with your arms like this over your pads.
And did you take the helmets off and swing when you're fighting, or was it more like...
No, I'm not Myles Garrett. Come on. No, actually, I think it was I grabbed a face mask and tried to pull somebody down by the face mask. It was rough.
So, yeah, we don't really know who won this joint practice. So there's not much from the game. Like I mentioned, Jalen Milroe, who's going to be the third-string quarterback, who I'm excited to see what he can do as a pro, was not ready to really play quarterback for an entire game with a bunch of third- and fourth-stringers. Fumbled 3 times. He struggled. Uchenna Nwosu for the Seahawks seems like he's getting close. Maybe he'll be ready for week 1. I saw a note from The Athletic that Nick Emanwari, their safety, has been playing a little more traditional safety over the last couple of weeks in practice, a little less like in the box playing linebacker. That's just something to keep an eye on for week 1. And then I'm not sure if Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to make this team. for sure after the emergence of Torrey Horton, for instance, the rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, it's interesting because first it was very strange to watch this game and see MVS in a Seahawks uniform at Lambeau Field wearing number 1. It was just strange. But he was also the recipient of Jalen Milroe's best throw of the day, which there weren't many to choose from. So I was like, oh, I guess we are in 2025 after all. From Milroe's performance, it just felt a lot like what you saw at Alabama, except the Packers it was kind of unfair. Third down, they were just sending blitzes after him. And that line, the backups on the line, which we already knew Seattle's starting line was not very good last year, plus Milroe being a youngster, they could not handle it. The pocket collapsed on him multiple times. Even when they designed runs for him, the Packers shut it down. It almost felt like they prepared for a Jalen Milroe game a little bit, like it was the regular season. So not to like beat down on him necessarily, but he is what he is, which is a guy who's going to have to take time to develop as a passer and somebody that you're going to use as a runner, this season during regular season games.
Yeah, I was not really thinking he would pass Drew Lock, although maybe, I guess, in my highest of hopes, you thought that would be possible. It didn't happen. Michael Sean Dugard listened to his podcast, and he talked about how, their offense against the Packers in that joint practice, it was really just all Jackson Smith and Jigba, who at this point, when he's in the slot, might be the best slot receiver in all of football, just dominating, getting open all the time. And that's it. No one else is getting open, which I hear and I think of as a Cooper Kupp, comment, because I don't know if they have other guys that can really separate. The Packers, their story this month is just injuries. When is Jaden Reed going to be back? We don't know if he'll be back for week 1. When is Nate Hobbs, their cornerback, going to be back? Don't know. Dontavian Wicks, Savion Williams, their rookie receiver. Xavier McKinney's been out of practice. Marshawn Lloyd, their backup running back, he's going to injured reserve. I've heard some Romeo Doubs trade buzz, but that doesn't make any sense to me.
There's no way that happens.
Why not?
Because they have 2 healthy receivers that are like deserving of being on the field. In fact, Matt LaFleur sat down with Kay Adams of Up and Adams, and she asked him about that. Like, there's rumors that he may be out of town, and he was so dismissive of it. He's like, no, that's not happening. He works hard. He's a great teammate, so on and so forth. There's no way they get rid of him. They're not gonna have anybody left. Matthew Golden made a nice catch in this game, but like, he's a rookie. You need Romeo Doubs. You need him desperately to start the season.
You know what my guess is with a situation like that? Then someone's being a Stinky Davis out there and sprinkling. It might be Romeo Doubs' representation and just sprinkling that out there, because he knows Doubs, the numbers might not be there for him this year. He's a free agent. Like, hey, any team want to give a good offer to Green Bay and just make them think about it? Like, because it doesn't sound like the Packers are interested, and it doesn't make sense. I agree. I do love that Bo Melton is making this team as a two-way player. I think that's an underplayed story. A former wide receiver that's going to make it as a cornerback, but you could use him in a pinch at wide receiver too. Isaiah Simmons had the typical Isaiah Simmons camp where he got a lot of pop early. I don't know if he's actually even going to make this team. And then I noticed their setup in this game had Rasheed Walker at left tackle, and then their first-round pick from a year ago, Jordan Morgan, next to him at left guard. I think it's because of a lot of injuries. Again, more injuries like on their offensive line. It's just a team. These aren't long-term injuries, but we'll just see what they look like week 1. Let's go to the Broncos and the Saints. Bravo to the Broncos and the Saints. Maybe not the best preseason game of the week. There was really only two good preseason games for true connoisseurs. Shook. Bears Chiefs was the other one. I mean, we got Mahomes and Caleb for like almost an entire half.
Yeah,
that looked like a real game.
High octane.
But our friends at the Saints Block Party podcast pointed out, and I agreed, this Broncos Saints game had a little something extra. It almost felt like the regular season. For a while, Sean Payton, it was like a revenge game in the preseason. Only Sean Payton could do that. We had starters on both sides. They were playing hard, and I don't have major takeaways from the game other than the Saints defense made it really hard on Bo Nix and the Broncos offense. And for the most part, the Broncos offense this preseason wasn't great. It took them until their 6th drive of the preseason. It was the 3rd one in this game to get a touchdown finally. It's not a huge sample size, and they weren't terrible. But it looked like a football game where both teams were trying and settling for field goals. It wasn't pretty, but you could tell there was just like a little something extra. And there were a lot of starters, mostly starters on both sides of the ball.
This is also 2 teams that just agreed to a trade earlier in the week with Devon Vele. And, sending a big receiver to a Saints receiving core that lacked a guy over 6'1". So interesting to see how he fits in. But yeah, I agree. Like, I'm watching this game and it's the second quarter. I'm like, Bo Nix is still in. And I'm sitting there thinking, all right, let me get Jarrett Stidham. Nope, we go straight to Sam Ehlinger after that. But you're right. It was a back and forth affair. There was a lot of activity. There was more juice to it than most of the preseason games, especially in week 3. And Bo Nix and the offense finally get down the field and put a touchdown on the board early in the second quarter, which I was like, okay, finally you did something. Because you're right. Unless it was Stidham on the field, this offense didn't look very good. With the starters for most of the preseason. I'm not going to sound the alarm bells, but the main takeaway I had from this matchup alone, because again, we have the Saints quarterback battle, right? Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, the agenda versus the rookie. I couldn't help but watch the Broncos offense operate, and even when they struggled, and then watch the Saints with Spencer Rattler and think, Kellen Moore, if you just took Sean Payton's approach with Bo Nix last year, applied it to Spencer Rattler, it would increase your possibility of finding success with him at quarterback, because once Shuck comes in, then you look at him and you're like, okay, that's a guy who is probably more fitting for what Kellen Moore wants to do offensively than what they're forcing Spencer Rattler to do. So why not get a little flexible? I don't know if he's going to, but I just couldn't help but see the Broncos, the example of it on the field, and then the Saints offense come on the field and just not do what I think they should do.
Great point. I guess the response would be, there's only one Sean Payton, and maybe Kellen Moore will prove to be a really great head coach, but he's not Sean Payton. Certainly, we haven't proved it yet. And then Spencer Rattler and Shuck are not Bo Nix until proven otherwise either. And yeah, the kind of bigger picture is that no Saints quarterback won the quarterback battle.
No.
Whoever got to play against the backups and the third stringers looked better each time. So Shuck probably had a better game. He certainly ended it well with a really nice drive, but they both were just and they weren't terrible either. They were just I didn't have a big takeaway other than Rattler played exclusively with the ones and Shuck played exclusively with the twos, and that was the same as was the case at practice. So they were certainly setting it up for Rattler to win the job. Crazier things have happened than flipping it, but if you were going to play Shuck, in week 1, it was stupid to waste this entire week with him with the backup crew. So I got to imagine it's Spencer Rattler. We'll find out in the next day or two. I have major questions about the Saints offensive line. I do like what I saw at Kendre Miller, a third-round pick from a couple years ago, who just has not been able to stay healthy and has looked good. I think he could be out there, as a really good backup to Alvin Kamara. I did want to mention Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, who I think hooked up for 4 catches for 83 yards, and there was a great rollout. Nix did have some good highlights throughout the preseason, and he's really good at throwing to his left. It reminds me a little of Kirk Cousins that way, except Nix is more athletic. Sutton was cooking Kool-Aid McKinstry, so there was a lot of pop shook about Kool-Aid McKinstry being like a true cornerback 1 and everything, but man, Sutton kind of owned him in this game a handful of times, and Kool-Aid it couldn't take him down on a long play either. So just a little note, if we're going to see some starters, I'll reward you with a little more conversation on NFL Daily. I feel like that's only fair.
I agree. The idea of Kool-Aid as a true cornerback 1 is very aspirational. It's not really rooted in reality, at least not right now. He did make a nice play on a ball to the end zone. He played good defense when that one broke it up, but yeah, thinking that he's just going to be your new cornerback 1 after you got rid of Marshawn Lattimore last year, it's overly aspirational.
Well, he is their cornerback 1 because they don't have anyone
But not
else.
A legit cornerback 1.
Right. Alontae Taylor is a good player, but he's their slot corner. He hasn't been healthy. Isaiah Foskey, their second-round pick from a few years ago, I think that was his last time as a member of the Saint. I think he's going to get cut. And, it's going to be Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant season on the Broncos side. I think they're a team that's one of the deepest in the NFL. And teams will be looking to see who gets cut there. Even their running back, like Audric Estime, looked okay in this game. Like he could make a team maybe somewhere. But we'll see what happens with the Broncos cut down day picks. All right, let's go to the Texans and the Lions joint practices. And you remember the Lions-Dolphins were the most uneven, joint practices. Every report I could find with this one, no one wanted to have a take. Everyone said perfectly even. Just good work. Good work by 2 good football teams all the way around. The defenses won a little bit. The offenses won a little bit. And I'll say that's a win for the Texans. If you're going out there in a joint practice with the Lions and it's looking like your 2 teams are pretty even, then it's like, okay, that's good, Houston. Because the offense apparently had a pretty solid day for Houston before all the starters sat in the actual game.
Yeah, the Lions, a team that have built a reputation for how they practice over the last few years, really in the Dan Campbell era. so much that Ben Johnson's tried to instill that in his Bears, and overseeing some of the most intense practices in the history of that beats experience covering the team. So yeah, if you come away with like it was a draw, it was a push, that's great for you, because this is a team that is expected to contend for the NFC, and if you really want to be a true AFC contender, then you need to stack up against the best. But it's also funny because I think they're similarly constructed in some ways. Like, this is one of the better defenses in the NFL in Houston. Like, we love this defense. The show loves this defense, and we expect them to play with grit, which happens to be the phrase that Dan Campbell wears on his hat. So we like that. We like that idea. It's the matter of the big question has always been with the Texans since last year. Can the offensive line hold up? Can they move the football? The line's gotten better throughout the preseason, at least according to those who were there. And if you're, again, in a draw against the Lions defense, then that's very encouraging. No matter whether you play Graham Mertz and Keaton Slovis in a preseason game or not.
Graham Mertz, who was he, a 6th-round pick? Everyone hated that pick. He was awesome in this game. Texans roll their third stringers over the Lions' third stringers 26-7.
Hooray.
I'm not really taking much
I got really tired of watching Graham Mertz and Keaton Slovis in the preseason this year.
I can't believe you did it. I can't pretend that I did. Who knows how long Joe Mixon is out at this point? I think that's one of the stories with Houston. Nick Chubb really does look like he's going to be the week 1 starter. So it's interesting. It'll be rugged. It will not be explosive. We'll see
rugged is super accurate. It's just going to be Chubb up the middle.
Dameon Pierce will be in the mix too, who's kind of a younger version of a similar style. So that's a big question hanging over the Texans. And then one thing I don't know if I've mentioned on this show since about March or April, which is that Jimmy Ward, who was a quality starter for the Texans, has not been on the field for them. He is facing domestic assault allegations. He's 35 years old. It came up again this last week because of a civil suit that's going against him that alleges the assault and that he was on drugs at the time. But it's just a reminder, A, he's not there. I don't expect him to be there, even though they haven't said anything about it. And that, he plays the same position as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's also hurt and going to be out for a while. So that's just something to watch, the Texans' safety spot. On the Lions side, man, Isaac TeSlaa, every week he shows up. I didn't plan this out, Shook, preseason MVP-wise, but let's think about it. Last week, I don't know if you actually listen to me when I'm honking. It's just a lot of honking. I feel bad for you.
What?
It's like,
why would you ever think that?
Imagine living with me.
How can we do a show if I don't listen to you?
Well, you could get away with it. Do you remember the 2 candidates I said, this is a tough one, for the preseason MVP award? Yeah, Isaac TeSlaa was not one of them.
It was Stidham, and I was on board with Stidham, and I wasn't as on board with the other one, which is why I don't remember the other one.
It was another quarterback with a game-winning drive last week.
Oh, it was Stetson Bennett, and I wasn't on board with it.
That's right. Oh, he was great. He gave me a lot of joy. But when we're handing out this award, you got to compete. You got to not be afraid to compete. You got to tell your coach, if you're Stetson Bennett, do not sit me for preseason week 3 for Dresser Wynn, who you're going to cut the next day. I need to play and get that award. He didn't play. Jarrett Stidham, you mentioned it earlier. He didn't play either for Sam Ehlinger. So I know Isaac TeSlaa probably only had like 8 catches all of preseason, but he had 6 of the best 8 catches all of preseason. And the fact they played 4 weeks, it feels like they've been in training camp for like months. Isaac TeSlaa is my preseason MVP. He did it again with another great touchdown catch. I think. Didn't he do that this week, or was that another?
Yeah, he had a touchdown catch this week. And he had a highlight touchdown catch last week as well. Right. And he's one of the favorites of NFL Daily as a rookie. And I don't care what kind of pushback we get from anybody in the comments who's like, oh, he's not going to be in the rotation to start the season. They're going to find a way to put him on the field because he's demonstrated the talent. He's demonstrated.
Oh, yeah, you got to get Tim Patrick on. Can't get Tim Patrick. Oh, God.
Oh, you got to get, look, all due respect for Tim Patrick and what he's fought through in his career to still be in the NFL. But my God, Isaac TeSlaa, he's a rookie. He's got, everything's ahead of him. Get him on the field. Let him work with Jared Goff. He did it with Kyle Allen, for God's sake.
They will. Kyle Allen looked pretty good. Clearly the QB2. Wouldn't be surprised if they flat out just cut Hendon Hooker because Dan Campbell talked about, look, they need to have as much depth as they can, and just hasn't worked out for Hooker in these games. They had a couple injuries early, remember, in camp, like Onwuzurike is not going to play this season at defensive line. Josh Pascal's going to be out a while. Enos Rakestraw, these depth guys. But they basically survived since. So I was a little worried that was like a bad start to the Lions season. I do keep an eye on Graham Glasgow. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something. He got hurt, their starting center, at practice this week, but it's really hard to know how serious these injuries are at this time of year. So just something I'm watching heading into week 1. Let's get to your Browns, finally. I mean, talk about disrespect. They bring in Tyler Huntley for the final 2-minute drive. And I'm not saying it was disrespectful to Shedeur. It just was weird that they played Tyler Huntley. Like, why bother? I'm not going to have a monster take, but just why bother? But if you're going to bring in Tyler Huntley and he's going to drive you down the field for the game-winning field goal, can you not cut him the next day? You knew you were going to cut him the next day, so why? That's stupid. The whole thing was stupid.
I hate to even look at the tinfoil hat that's getting dust in the corner of this room. But I am going to reach for it at this point because I was at the game. And when I tell you that for a preseason game, a lot of people hung around to watch Shedeur Sanders play.
I'm sure
there were more people in that stadium in the third and fourth quarter of a preseason game than I've seen in 2 decades of being at that stadium. And I was like, wow, they're really excited to watch him. At one point after his first bad drive, he ran down to the dog pound to get those fans riled up before he went out there again. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to age well if it's anything like the first drive. And the drive was even worse. So my tinfoil hat conspiracy of the week is Kevin Stefanski got so frustrated with how bad the offense looked with Shedeur at quarterback that he put Tyler Huntley in there and said, I know he's going to get the ball out on time and not hang on to it forever. And he's going to get us possibly in range for a field goal to win this game, even though it doesn't matter. Proving a point by doing that. I think it was that and nothing more.
I agree. I also think the outrage it's all stupid. The whole thing is stupid. We're talking about 2 mid-round rookies trying to battle to be backups. Shedeur's a 5th-round pick. And he had as bad a game as you could possibly have, and there are contextual reasons for it, and it's not the end of the world. Joe Flacco said after the game, I just told him, like, everyone's had those sort of games, and it's true. But it was that disastrous of a game. Shedeur was sacked 5 times. He threw 6 passes. They had negative 27 yards on his 14 dropbacks. He was lost in this game, and yeah, he was playing with a bunch of players that weren't on the roster by like the end of the weekend. So that all is to be taken into account. But I do think we can have takeaways, not just from this game, but from the arc of the preseason and camp, which is that based on all reporting, like Shedeur got more reps than any 4th-string quarterback in history at practice. And he looked really good for the most part at practice. So he kept getting more and more. And Dillon Gabriel, Nick, started slow. But sometime after he came back from the injury, I don't know if the practices were better. I think they were better, but the games were great. Like He looked great in the games. I would have given him a B+ for his first appearance in the preseason, and I'd give him an A- for this one.
Yeah.
So he just looked better, and so he's got to be the first one off the bench. I think, assuming it's not Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, folks are like, oh, after the Carolina game, I can't believe Shedeur is still 4th on the depth chart. Well, now that the preseason is concluded, you see why the depth chart is what it is, which is that Dillon Gabriel came out in 2 games and handled the job as pretty much as well as you can. He made the mistake on the pick 6 against Philadelphia, but I think in total, he probably made 3 or 4 decisions where you're just like, oh, that was a flat out bad decision that you need to learn from. There was another one where he was scrambling to his left in the red zone, and he basically had a clear path to the end zone, if not close to the goal line.
Yes.
And decided to fire it into traffic, and it looked a lot like the throw that he attempted against Philadelphia that was picked off by Andrew Makuba. So, and that happened right in front of me, and I'm like, oh no, he did it again. Like, just run. Those are the things you learn from. But as the way I describe him, I had somebody behind me asking the questions like, how do you think this is going to shake out? And I was like, this is how it's going to go. They're going to go with Joe Flacco. If Kenny Pickett's on the team, he'll be the backup. And then it's going to be Gabriel. And then it's going to be Shedeur. And I think at some point you're going to see all 4 if Pickett's on the team, just because history says the Browns play a lot of quarterbacks over the course of the season. And I think that Gabriel in 2 games has done. He's been a game manager who has not taken any shots downfield. And I don't know if he's capable of doing it, but I don't think Kevin Stefanski wants that in a quarterback, especially a young quarterback. He wants somebody who's going to manage the offense and execute it as he wants it executed. I think Gabriel checked all those boxes. It's just that he's got a lower ceiling. Shedeur had that great game in Carolina. really bad game against the Rams and didn't play in Philadelphia because he was dealing with an oblique injury. So the picture is a little bit more unclear. But again, this isn't somebody that you were going to expect to be on the field in week 1. So it's fine. He's a young guy who needs time to learn. Let it just be that and not some conspiracy that they're sabotaging him, because they're not.
Kenny Pickett is still on this roster. He's reportedly getting healthier. Look, if the Raiders want to send them some sort of pick for Kenny Pickett, they might just be like, okay, that's fine. Because Gabriel maybe showed enough to think, okay, he could just be our backup. I think he'd be ready at least to be a backup. I thought he got through his reads quickly. Like, there was an opposite hash throw to the out, which was great. People get on him for his arm strength, and I'm sure he doesn't have like the cannon down the field, but he has more than enough to play at the NFL level. Like, he was processing and going through his reads, like I said, pretty fast. So
he was decisive. The height thing is going to be an issue. I saw one ball that he had, I think it was DeLarvadain, where he got blasted in the back by a defender, where it got deflected at the line, and that's why it was off target and why his receiver got hit. And I think that's going to continue to be an issue, but he is mobile enough to roll him out if you have to. So yeah, I agree with you.
One thing I clocked, which is interesting, Zach Jackson has a podcast on the Browns, and he said, considering the amount of outrageously good throws Shedeur made throughout camp, he wondered what else is going on for Shedeur to not get higher on the depth chart and more opportunities. Just kind of an interesting blind item. When that comes from a beat reporter, I don't know. I don't know what he meant, but I found it interesting. I am going to shout out a guy that Andrew Siciliano noted on Twitter is making the team, because Kevin
Yes, I was going to do this if you didn't.
Do it, because then I won't sound like a homer.
Product of the Tulane Green Wave, Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive tackle who started the game playing fullback, finishes with a sack and a half, forced fumble, has made the team. And it's especially personal to me because, as we chronicled last year around this time, College Football 25 came out and I led the Green Wave to a national championship just to make Gregg happy. And Aiden Huntington was a standout on that defense for me. So it's really happy to see real life Aiden Huntington succeeding in making a roster in the NFL.
And that he's playing both ways, that he's playing fullback. He had a couple
He's
sacks
a real
in this
Pat
game,
Ricard.
a couple TFLs. I don't know, like, Stefanski never says anything, and then he went to the podium and said this undrafted rookie's making the team. I think all the reporters were like, what? He never says stuff like that, so they love him. That's a cool camp story. I don't have much to say on the Rams. Terrence Ferguson, their second-round tight end, played in this game and looked quite good. Just galloping, and Stride had one play down the field, but got open a couple times, and will be interesting if they use him during the season. It was a good camp, I think, for Nate Landman at linebacker for the Rams. They do not play any of their guys in the preseason at all. The lack of surprises in general for the Rams means they had a good training camp. There wasn't a lot of news other than Stafford, and we'll see, but maybe my Stafford panic was a little unnecessary. We'll see. He had a good week, a good first week back. We don't really know, but it sounded like he checked a lot of boxes to progress during the week.
Look, no news, I think, is good news considering we've chronicled this. I mean, we were literally at the point last week where he took the field in pads and the Rams tweeted it out and I wrote about it without knowing like what capacity he participated in or anything. That's just how slowly this has progressed. So you hope that you hear less, and no news is good news for him considering his age, his injury history, and everything else. I do want to go back to the game though, real quick. One guy that stood out to me from like field level viewing was safety for the Rams. His name is Tanner Engel. And he played his tail off in that game. That man was laying the wood on defense. Special teams, number 34, was flying around the field. And I just checked their cuts so far. He's still on the roster. So keep an eye on number 34.
What? So I was watching the broadcast. Last time I get to see the best trio in the game, JB Long, Mina Kimes, and Maurice Jones-Drew here locally. And yeah, Sean McVay comes on that broadcast and does, half a quarter. He's so good at it. I think he called him the human missile. And
yeah, that's how he played.
Sean McVay just loved that guy, that he showed up each and every week. He was the post-game interview. So I am a sucker for stories like that. I think he made the Rams. Let's talk Colts Bengals. How about those Colts third stringers just wiping the floor with the Bengals, 41-14. It's crazy that they charge full price for preseason games. I keep saying this for season ticket holders. It's just outrageous. The quarterback matchups in this game, Shook, there were some wild ones this weekend, but I think Riley Leonard and Jason Bean versus Desmond Ridder and Thorne. Who's Thorne? P. Thorne? I don't know who that is on the Bengals. That to me took the cake of the most preseason week 3 matchup of the week.
Peyton Thorne.
Don't say anything about this game. Nothing happened in this game. Say something about one of these teams if you please.
No, I wanted to give a shout out to the defensive back who came back from an ACL tear as a rookie and then an Achilles tear in the following season. Last name is Scott, had a pick 6. That was nice. But yeah, I mean, we know the story for the Colts. It's been the quarterback competition. It's been the whole Daniel Jones wins over Anthony Richardson. And I just see a low ceiling for each option in this offense in a year that Shane Steichen needs to win games because his job could be on the line. Same goes for Chris Ballard. I'm just not super inspired or encouraged by what the Colts have shown me in the preseason so far. So we'll see. And the Bengals, their big question mark was, is their defense going to be good? All the talk out of camp was like, oh, this defense might actually be good. We haven't seen it so far. When they played Washington on Monday night, they didn't look very good. So, and you still have the Trey Hendrickson thing lingering out there as well. We know what this offense brings to the table. As long as their offensive line can hold up, we know what they're going to do. And surprising depth at running back as well. We know what they have at receiver and everything else. It's the defense. I got those guys that they drafted. They keep saying it looks
great in practice. They keep saying, well, we don't mind.
Okay, that's great.
Great in practice.
Do it on the field. Do it in Cleveland in week 1 against 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And then maybe I'll buy in because you have guys that are unproven that you've drafted over the last few years that have to be contributors this year. It's good. It's a big ask. So I need it proven to me.
They love Demetrius Knight, but then he shows up in the games and he doesn't look good. Back to the Steichen of it all. I'm going to play a clip. And this is from the Athletic reporter James Boyd asking Shane Steichen after deciding to go with Daniel Jones if he has any regrets. And just listen to the questions and listen to the answers.
Beyond injuries, what other things do you think you could have done to help the development plan get to where it needs to go?
Yeah, I think that's a process. It's a day in and day out process. Like I said, just in the meetings, the classroom, the fundamentals of everything, and continue to work in stride in those areas. And he hasn't made improvements in those areas, and I think he's going to continue to improve in those areas.
Well, I guess what you specifically, what do you think you could have done differently?
Well, I think you look back in those situations, like I said, I mentioned the injuries, but again, meeting with them, met a lot with them during those injuries, just obviously from a mental standpoint, staying in it. And I think he did a good job with that, and he's continuing to improve with that.
What? I'm always wondering, gaslighting is one of those words that you're like, I know what it means, but it's hard to describe what does it mean. That was gaslighting. He didn't remotely answer the questions. What could have you done better, Shane Steichen? And I teed it up partly to get to a larger point, which is if Shane Steichen was a coach of a more popular team, a national team, I think he would get a lot more grief from how lame he is in front of the podium, how he never answers anything, and he sort of got a I'm smarter than you attitude when, it just drives me a little crazy. A reporter's finally trying to drill down and ask a real question. And what were those answers? They were answers to a completely different question that I don't even know what that question would have been.
No, they weren't even answers to a different question. They were a defense of what it was his defense of himself. He's like,
right.
They're like, how could you have been better? And he's like, well, I met with him a lot. That's not what we asked. We asked, how could you have been better? You could have said, well, I could have done X, Y, and Z. No, he just recapped what he did for him. It reminded me of a CEO of a company that's been caught red-handed, and then they just tap dance around it. With a word salad. That's kind of what that was. And you're right. I think that if they were a pillar franchise, like a Cowboys or something like that, they'd be under the microscope daily for their current situation and how they handle this quarterback situation, the way that he operates. But they're not. So that kind of explains who the Colts are in a nutshell right now. And you hope that it ends up better than that.
They said that Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season. They also said that about Joe Flacco last year when they benched him. And 2 weeks later, they went back to Richardson. I don't think they're going to do that this year beyond an injury or Daniel Jones going 0-4, 0-5, but that's on the table. Either one of those things. Positive for the Colts. Tyler Warren looks legit. I'm surprised he's going as the tight end 10 in fantasy leagues. If you told me he had a Brock Bowers-like rookie season, that wouldn't shock me. I know there's not going to be that many yards to go around there, but he looks legit. And you mentioned the Bengals offense shook. They had 5 drives in the preseason. They scored 4 touchdowns. Like, they keep unearthing these receivers. Mitch Tinsley looks like a star. Shamar Stewart quickly passed Myles Murphy and became the starting edge. I think that's a positive on the defensive side of things. But yeah, that just looks like more of the same for the Bengals. And it's been more of the same for this show too, Shook. I think we need to take a second break, because if we're going to do one final preseason takeaway show of all 32 teams, we're going to go a little long. We'll be back in a minute. Back on NFL Daily, Shook. I don't know if you remember back in the old, the around the NFL days, the unbelievable winning streak in the preseason of the Baltimore Ravens, and how front of mind that had been. And since they took on their loss, I've noticed they've gotten it going again this year. Undefeated, 3-0, plus 53, 30-3 over the Commanders. Sure, it might be a bunch of third and fourth stringers, but they just can't help themselves. They dominate the preseason. Man, of all the teams in the NFL, I can't think of one that had a more uneventful camp. And for a good team, that's great. It's really, ever since Isaiah Likely's injury, and we don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season or not, it's been quiet there. There really hasn't been much going on, and I feel good about my potential Ravens Super Bowl pick right now. Nothing's gotten in their way.
I feel better about that pick than I felt about your Bills Super Bowl pick last year, and I'm completely on board with that pick.
They got to the AFC title game. I mean,
I know.
It wasn't a bad pick. It was close.
Close but no cigar. You're right about the Ravens, though. Like, every time I went through their games this preseason, I was more interested in the team they were playing. Like, I was watching it for the other team, not for Drew Leary and the Ravens off and Rasheen Ali and random Dearness Johnson. Like, no, I don't need that. I want to see the other team play, because I know who the Ravens are and they know who they are, and they're still going to dominate the other team even if they're playing with a bunch of backups. It's just the sign of a rock-solid franchise that has greater aspirations at this point in the season. So even in this game with a bunch of backups, this is one of those preseason games where you're like, let's not talk about the game.
Yes. We hit the Brian Robinson trade from the other side, but for the Commanders, it's definitely a show of confidence for our guy, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I mean, I know the whole country got on this guy, but we were there 5 or 6 weeks ago, really giving weekly segments to Bill.
But did we know it was Bill at that time?
We didn't know it was Bill for a couple weeks. I think Chris Rodriguez will play for this team too. I think they like Austin Eckler. I actually think for fantasy, people are probably getting over their skis when it comes to Bill, because I think they're going to play Jeremy McNichols. They're going to play Austin Eckler. Like, they're going to play all these guys. But Krosky-Merritt's still fun. I noticed, Luke McCaffrey's out there with a deep third stringers. Noah Brown's been hurt all camp too. One underrated thing for this offense is that I think they're going to miss Zacchaeus, Alameda Zacchaeus, and De'Ami Brown more than people remember. It's like, yeah, they added Deebo Samuel, but those guys are pretty good NFL receivers, and you're kind of seeing them actually have real roles in their new spots for a reason. And no one really stepped up in the depth group in camp in terms of the practice reports from the Commanders.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at him on paper, I've always liked KJ Osborne from his time in Minnesota, but yeah, if you're swapping and you want proven production from veterans that are just like replacement level or slightly better, I think it's a concern for them. And you also wonder, are you going to get a full season out of Deebo Samuel? That's really the big thing with them. So overall, though, I'm not going to like sound the alarm bells with them, because we really don't know what they're going to look like until they take the field in week 1. But yeah, it's you could be better. And McCaffrey playing in the third quarter with the third stringers, that's not really encouraging. But you kind of saw this going in that direction for most of this camp and preseason.
I like the secondary, and I like Marshawn Lattimore staying healthy and practicing throughout camp. I can't, tell you how rare that is. Saints fans know that. It just hasn't happened in years and years. So that's a good sign for him. Trey Amos, their rookie cornerback, everything has been positive with him. All right, let's get to the Bears-Chiefs. Game of the week. Hey, it's like, oh no, we can't possibly expose Davis Mills to the rigors of preseason week 3. He's too valuable. We got to sit Davis Mills. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest players in the history of this sport, is out there into the second quarter, diming the Bears' starting defense. And I sent out a tweet last week, Shook, about guys I want in my fantasy leagues, guys who I want to draft. It included some under-the-radar guys. Bashal Tutin was in there. It included some stars like
I know this one. I know
AJ Brown. And I wanted to put Patrick Mahomes there. And I didn't. I didn't put Patrick Mahomes because I wimped out because I know fantasy like I think this is the year to go get him fantasy pick. You buy low, sell high, and I just got a feeling they're going to be going deep. They're going to be a little bit back to the Chiefs. They certainly were in this game. Great protection against the Bears starters. They dominated. They look awesome, and they made me a little more excited to watch the Chiefs.
This is one of the rare preseason games where I felt like I really gained something from watching this contest. And I don't know if it was like the field mics were hot or something, but it sounded really loud at Arrowhead for a preseason game. The energy was super high. Like they were fired up at Arrowhead. And I think it was because Patrick Mahomes was doing Patrick Mahomes things, making plays out of structure, just dropping dimes, throwing a beautiful pass to Juju Smith-Schuster to convert a third down that looked impossible to convert and keep a drive alive, leading them down the field for a touchdown. Finding a guy that I think is going to bring a lot of value to Patrick Mahomes in this Chiefs offense overall, and it's Tyquan Thornton because of what he can do stretching the field. As soon as he caught his first pass in this game, I went, God, how did they let the Chiefs get this guy? Because this was a former draft pick who was all about speed and stretching the field. And if any team needed a receiver to stretch the field, it was the Chiefs, since that used to be their identity. And now he's on the team and he's going to make plays for them. So, this was a game that I looked back and I was like, this makes me excited for the regular season. I also want to note that like 10 different guys logged at least one rushing attempt. Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, Carson Steele, Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, Chris Oladokun, Gardner Minshew, and like just continue going down the list. Like
that's amazing.
3 of those guys are quarterbacks. Like this is how crazy this game was.
I don't know if Elijah Mitchell's going to make this team for what it's worth. If you're interested in that sort of thing, I did hear Brett Veach on the broadcast, who's been working out, by the way. You can always tell the GMs that have been working out in the offseason. He's been working out. He popped Brashard Smith, their 7th round pick, and really gave him a lot of love. And I was like, ooh, the GM's giving him love. That's something to file away. I still think he'd be a nice, deep fantasy league type of pick. The Josh Simmons at left tackle thing, it's really a thing.
So good.
And part of my confidence in Mahomes is just the law of averages. He is the best quarterback in football, and careers go through little ups and downs, even for the greatest. And so he's just like, he's not going to have 3 straight years like that. I think he's just, you know what I mean? Like he's due. And I think some of the reasons of what's around him will help. Let's talk Caleb Williams, who made Ben Johnson a little salty after the game. He was kind of like, that was sloppy early. The first couple drives against the Chiefs starters were sloppy, just not sharp, some mental mistakes. I don't think Caleb Williams was seeing the field very well. He was holding on to the ball. The Bears defense was run over a little bit too. But, once the Chiefs backups kind of came in there, Caleb righted the ship and it looked better. So I'm not drawing too many conclusions, but it is a reminder this could be an up and down process. Ben Johnson said, like, look, these were some of the things that have been plaguing us in practice showing up this time in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt also like approach-wise, they didn't really let Caleb throw consistently, like on a play-by-play basis, until they got to that 2-minute situation at the end of the first half. And at that point, they started to unleash it, and at that point, they were also playing the backups, and they produced. And before that, it was a lot of 3rd and long, Caleb in a pocket that's slowly crumbling around him, doing that thing where he stands still in the pocket and then at the last second decides to rip one. Some of them were positive, but the offense just felt a little disjointed until that last 2-minute situation in which they finally, picked up some steam and ended with a touchdown pass to Romo Dunze. I think this is going to be a work in progress for them throughout this season, but I do feel a lot better about them. That was my one takeaway watching this game was, okay, at least I feel better about these Bears under Ben Johnson, even if it doesn't happen overnight, than I did going into last season with Matt Eberflus. Like, I can see the vision here. They're going to climb steadily. It's just not going to happen immediately. And if you're a Bears fan, I think you can sign up for that.
So I just mentioned Alameda Zaccheaus. He's going to be a part of this offense.
Yep.
That's one of my takeaways is like he is going to get passes in this offense. Their running back 2 right now, partly because of injuries, is a man I don't know that well, Kyle Monangai. Is that how you say it?
Monangai?
It's a little thin at running back 2, but he's looked okay. Jaquan Brisker, who had that terrible concussion last year, had a healthy summer, so that was just something I wanted to know. And then the Chiefs made a trade on Sunday, bringing back Derek Nottie from the Jets for a late-round conditional pick swap. So that he probably was not making the Jets, but the Chiefs are familiar with him, so a depth pickup their Joshua Williams, their cornerback, who had some pretty significant snaps in Super Bowls, at least the one against the Eagles the first time around, might be on the cutting block or a trade candidate, something to watch there. Let's go Titans, Vikings. We already talked Carson Wentz. We already talked Max Brosmer. The last Vikings point before we get to a little Titans is that there's been some pop shook about a potential Adam Thielen trade to Minnesota. They traded Harrison Phillips last week, a defensive tackle, and some people thinking that might have been to open up a little cap space to get this Thielen deal done. The reporting is that they still have some financial things to work out to try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think the talk on him was we're just going to leave that to the front office, which always suggests to me that, yeah, we're on board with that idea. We know what the receiver situation is with them right now. You have Jordan Addison going to be suspended to start the year, Jalen Naylor dealing with something, Justin Jefferson, you don't feel super confident about him. Like, basically, they're thin at the position, and they're relying on rookies like Lucky Jackson and possibly Ty Felton to find a fit in this. But if you're a team that wants to get to where you were last year, you kind of can't afford to take that risk. So why not bring back a guy who knows Minnesota very well and prove last year that he can still be a productive receiver? Get him out of Carolina, get him back with the Vikings, see if he's got one more or maybe 2 more good years left with him. It's like a stopgap option that you can count on.
I love it. He looked good last year for the Panthers. Now, should the Panthers be trading away a reliable receiver? Maybe not, but their receiver room is a lot deeper and more encouraging than it was previously. And just as a fan and remembering all the great Thielen moments in Minnesota, I would love to see it. So that feels like a win-win trade. Cam Ward finished a quietly impressive preseason, 12 for 22 for 152 yards. And I really like what Brian Callahan, his coach, said after the game, just that it just doesn't seem too big for him. And sometimes he's a little late on his throws, but his arm makes up for it. That's me talking. He had this deep out where he's throwing the ball off his own goal line to Van Jefferson, where he layers it, over the underneath defender, but with enough speed to get it to Jefferson on the sideline. And man, he just whips that thing in there, Shook. And I thought he's had a really nice preseason for a number 1 overall draft pick. I'm just even more excited to watch him this year.
I think whips is a great way to describe this because that is his throwing motion in a nutshell. And on the broadcast, they were talking about how Tennessee's coaches have tried to get him to step into his throws more. But I think he has enough arm strength, talent, and accuracy to be able to get away with that in most instances. Like, that's a very accurate throw. That's essentially almost off platform because he's just like kind of floating backward and just lets it rip by whipping it. And it wasn't the only time he made a throw like that. There was another throw in this game where he was rolling, I believe, to his right. And you're watching it from the sideline view in the broadcast. And I think it was Julius Chestnut who came open on the backside. And I'm looking at him at Chestnut open. I'm going, I wonder if he's going to take that throw. If he sees him, he's going to take that risk. Because a lot of quarterbacks, that's a no-no. Don't throw across your body. Ward sees it and just whips it right over to him for a completion. And I'm like, that is Miami Cam Ward. That is the guy that could elevate this team as a whole. This should be your franchise quarterback. I think it's going to take time for them to get better around him. It's going to take multiple years. But I do think even off of this preseason action that he gave them a very encouraging sample size that they can take with positive momentum into the season, even if the season ends up being a pretty trying one.
Yeah, he just looks like a guy that's ready, and that's why I'm ready to give him the honor that it's time for the Who Delivered presented by Uber Eats, and I am saying that Cam Ward delivered for me because Titans fans are out there. They're wanting more attention on their number 1 overall pick, but every time I hear Cam Ward talked about, it's like nobody pays attention to Cam Ward. Well, if everyone's saying that, people are paying attention, and he is delivering not only on the field with throws like that, and I think Van Jefferson, if he was not going to make that team, and I'm not sure he was a lock, he might have made it in that game because he went 3 for 103. I think a crazy stat line in that game. I wonder if Tyler Lockett's like definitely on this team. I don't know. I mean, someone's got to be the odd man out here, but ultimately it's not Cam Ward. And in a week that you got into a fight with Jeffrey Simmons, I mean, nothing says more, I'm not afraid of nobody, than getting in a fight with Jeffrey Simmons, maybe the most fearsome player in the entire league than that. And Cam Ward kind of joked about it, when they asked him about it the next day, saying, what did you learn? I learned that Jeffrey Simmons is a strong man. And Jeffrey Simmons has reportedly looked good. So, shout out to to Cam Ward. Can't wait to watch him week 1. That was Who Delivered, presented by Uber Eats. When football makes you hungry, get game day deals presented by Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Cowboys and Falcons played. Joe Milton's revenge actually played pretty well in this game. They did have an injury. Jaden Blue, their running back, hurt his ankle. Another injured player, Trayvon Diggs, was activated by the Cowboys on Sunday. So that's a really good sign that maybe he could be ready for the beginning of the season, or at least close to it. They are going to carry him on the 53-man roster. That's really interesting. And I don't know, Shook, if you saw the Micah Parsons situation. How would you describe how he was on the sideline?
He was taking a siesta on a training table, which, look, don't get me wrong. If you're tired, you're a little exhausted from like participating, a training table is a great place to take a nap.
Sure.
Except he hasn't been participating in weeks because of all the drama that we've already covered ad nauseum. But yeah, he didn't look very engaged on that sideline. So I think we continue to monitor that, which is kind of getting stranger by the week. I am very bummed about the Jaden Blue news because I think this running back room, for as low of a ceiling as it has, or at least I'm a pessimist when I look at them, I was very intrigued by his role in this. And it was interesting to see how they divided up the reps in this game. You saw a lot of Deuce Vaughn. You saw a lot of Jaden Blue. He's not the type of guy that like checks the old Chris Wessling box of like, that guy's got the juice in the preseason. But there's moments where I'm like, okay, I could see him playing a key role in this offense, possibly as a third down back, maybe somebody who takes a decent amount of carries. So as we try to figure out how they're going to, order up this running back room and whether Miles Sanders is actually cut out for it or not, hearing that, knowing that he got hurt, that's a bummer for me because I think that this is just one of the more intriguing position groups, albeit a low ceiling. And especially after a game in which Joe Milton finally played well. Like, I was very happy to see his week-by-week progression. I was like, oh, okay, now he's actually knows how to throw a fade. He didn't know how to for 2 previous weeks. He's reading coverages. He's making decisions. He's not just making plays with his legs. That was very encouraging to see, but as it is with the Cowboys usually, can't just have nothing but good news, even after a preseason game.
Right. I mean, the Diggs news to me is a big one. Jalen Guyton, they're talking, their left tackle, that he might be back a little earlier than people think. So these are stories we will be tracking. Mozzie Smith, their former first-round pick, was out there deep into the game, which indicates they might be cutting him. For the Falcons, I keep feeling like I just don't have much on them. It's partly because they don't play any of their meaningful players. But I did see, AtlantaFalcons.com write that, Pierce and Walker are both not expected to start. They're 2 rookies, Jalen Walker and James Pierce. And it seems like James Pierce is actually ahead of Jalen Walker, who's overcoming an injury. So he might be 4th in line at edge. Not anything to panic about, but something to track. You would want that to progress sooner than later during the season. Raheem Morris also confirmed Caleb McGarry, their tackle, is going to be out for a significant time. We hit that earlier on the show, but confirmed by the coach that he's going to be out a while. Meanwhile, Giants, Patriots. If there's one thing that the Giants love, it's seeing the flying Elvi of the Patriots helmet coming their way. 42 Giants, 10 Patriots. They put a hurt on the Patriots backups. Now they had, mostly backups in, but so did the Giants. And the Giants backups look good. Jackson Dart comes in, looked pretty good again. Like, Brian Daboll was so mad when Jalen Hyatt dropped his precious quarterback's pass in this game.
He dropped 2 of them. And then he finally caught one.
This game is so long ago. I'm like, was this week? It seems so long ago.
It was. Now. He dropped 2 great throws by Jackson Dart. Dart gets knocked out. Jameis comes in, first throw, touchdown pass to Jalen Hyatt, who finally catches a contested ball. Like, I was just like, come on, man. Dart looks very good, like very capable of handling that job. It's going to be a situation to monitor, especially if they get off to a slow start. Like, I know there was a lot of like consternation and uncertainty about him going into the draft, and I totally understand that. And it's not that I was entirely on board, but I was in the vicinity. Oh man, I see what the Giants saw now. I know it's only the preseason, but I'm very encouraged to see what he looks like in an NFL game in the regular season because I liked what I saw throughout this preseason.
And it's going to be such a different offense with him, and you just see that. Like, some people are like, well, but he's not testing the ball downfield. There's not a lot of like super pro concepts like It's like, yeah, that's what it's going to look like when he actually plays too. That's what you do, is build the offense around your quarterback. He's a rookie. Just feels like they're wasting time with Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to make it through, 3 weeks, because unless they just pull off some upsets. They have the Commanders week one. You could win that. You could win that game certainly, but if they're not winning, I think he's gone. Might be the end of Tommy DeVito with the Giants, although he could always end up on the practice squad. Cam Scatterbo didn't really happen in the preseason. That's fine, but he's third on the depth chart, I would guess, going into the season. Jackson Dart did fumble and take a big hit on his last play. I know a penalty overturned, it being a fumble, but he didn't know that as he was putting his body on the line. So you want to avoid that. For the Patriots, Ian Rappaport, our guy, confirmed what it seemed pretty clear, which is that Kyle Duggar is available if you wanted to trade for him. I saw Mike Vrabel get all up in arms, calling someone a rat. That Jalen Polk was reported to be out for the season. Hearing Mike Vrabel caution the media about the dangers of unnamed sources, I sure see a lot of pro Mike Vrabel stuff every time he's looking for a job or trying to keep his job that are attributed to unnamed sources. So it's just calm down. Let people report things if they're factual. He wasn't questioning the factual nature of Jalen Polk being out for the season. I don't know what more to say about the Patriots other than Kayvon Chason. Hadn't mentioned him on this show. Has had a great camp, a great preseason, had a sneaky great year for the Raiders last year, and I think has passed Keon White on the depth chart, where he's ahead of him at edge. They're decent at edge up front. You got Harold Landry too. They have a pretty fun front, but it is interesting. Keon White now kind of playing with the backups. Keep an eye. Kayvon Chason might be having kind of a mid-career former first-round pick renaissance, kind of Dante Fowler style, like the Jaguars, where disappointment for the Jaguars, but ends up being a really solid pro who has a longer career. That would be the hope for him.
Another comp, maybe Leonard Floyd, didn't do much in Chicago.
Who's ahead of those two young guys in Atlanta. He's one of the guys ahead of the two young guys.
I like that. Where do we see this Patriots receiver room shaking out now that we've got this information and a full preseason worth of tape?
So Efton Chisholm, their undrafted rookie, is making this team and could have a decent role on the team. He really looked that good in the preseason. Stephon Diggs, I think, has had a pretty quiet, maybe concerning preseason and camp in terms of he does not look like a number one receiver, but I think it's Demario Douglas, it's Stephon Diggs, it's Mac Hollins as their top three receivers, and then Kyle Williams, who got concussed in this game, and Chisholm are probably 4 and 5. I think they're going with the younger guys here, and we'll see. Jalen Polk is hurt, and I think maybe the 49ers trade for Kendrick Bourne. That would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Is Javon Baker somebody that you end up seeing getting practice squatted and then picked up by somebody else?
Someone would pick him up. He's fast. They could keep him as a special teamer, but he's further down the list. I'm more interested in the offensive line. Cole Strange might be available. Anyone that Bill Belichick drafted, they're available. Vrabel just wants to get rid of all these guys. I mean, it's crazy they're trading Duggar. They're going to be starting potentially a 4th-round rookie, Craig Woodson, who a lot of people thought that was a reach, but he's going to play. I don't know if Garrett Bradbury's starting at offensive line. Their offensive line is easily the most concerning part of the team, that it's not enough better compared to a year ago. And let's get to the Steelers and the Panthers. We are wrapping up our recaps with bad news. Derek Harmon, their 1st-round pick, sprained his knee in the preseason finale, and he is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Might not be IR, but we'll see. They have had a rookie, Shook, Yaya Black, play pretty well behind him, so I still think they feel good about their depth up front. Really, their concerns are on the offensive side. I do not think they have a ton of concerns about the defense.
I thought it was interesting in this game that they played this week that against the Panthers, that Pat Freiermuth was getting a ton of snaps outside of the starters.
I think that might have been a situation where he hadn't previously, because he was coming off an injury, and that does happen sometime, where you want to get a guy more work who hasn't before. But they are deep at tight end, so your tinfoil hat might not be that crazy. Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, is he 3rd in line now? Were they showcasing him for a trade?
Right.
You could certainly get something for Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, and I just even his body language kind of suggested that he was a little frustrated with the fact that he was out there. Like he was just, I was like, oh, that's a little
Interesting.
That made me raise an eyebrow.
They are healthy at tackle. Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones, I think, had good camps, like step forward. Fautanu, they're really hoping is going to be good, but Broderick Jones was healthy. He's moved back to left tackle where he used to play before, so their offensive line is really important to protect Aaron Rodgers because no one really stepped up at that wide receiver battle. By all accounts, if you average all the reporting, like Scotty Miller might be their second best wide receiver, which is
made a great catch in this game.
Right. Calvin Austin has been hurt. Aaron Rodgers likes Scotty Miller. They should be looking for wide receivers. The Panthers apparently aren't if they're going to trade Adam Thielen. They rested all their backups in this game. And so really my biggest takeaway from this camp was I'm excited for the Tetaroa McMillan era. And I think the Panthers are too.
The T-Mac era. Let it begin. Sans the Adidas shoes, the sneakers, Tracy Green.
There was an injury in this game, or maybe it was in practice. I'm not sure which. It was Princely Umanmielen hurt his shoulder hitting Darnell Washington, which is probably going to become like a really common way to get injured. It's just like throwing your shoulder into Darnell
a mountain.
Washington. Yeah.
Into Mount Washington, yes.
Right.
Of course.
I mean, I love Darnell Washington. And so that's two of their young pass rushers who are out. We don't know how long the injury is going to be for Umanmielen, but Nick Scorton is also out with a collapsed lung. They have a lot of questions on their defense, but I feel pretty good about their offense and where they are at. I feel good about where we're at, Shookie. We did it. I don't know how many games are in the preseason. I could do the math. 49, right? Yeah, because, 16
Something
a week.
like that.
And then one for the Hall of Fame. We're done. It's over.
We did it. Siciliano, I think, was who tweeted out the total
Yes.
games and then said like 278 regular season games or something like that. The grind truly begins now. Sicko season. It may seem to be over, but it's actually only just begun because we have 18 weeks of football ahead of us after this dead week. Also, one last comp for you, since we just talked about it. Scotty Miller, new age Jeff Janis.
No, I mean, Jeff Janis was like a big, strong.
I'm just kidding.
But he, I see the comp though, and that just Rodgers likes him.
Random
So
receivers that Aaron Rodgers likes.
Yes, I like that. Jeff Janis caught one of his Hail Marys, right?
Yes, he did.
That was the best Jeff Janis moment. So you called it a dead week. I'm going to take that personally. This is actually going to be one of the best weeks of NFL Daily content of the season. We have also 40s and free agents coming out. We're wrapping up our division previews. We're going to preview the whole season. So that's actually the next show that you're going to hear in your feed as a 40s and free agent. And so we'll hit any news from Monday with that, me and Daniel Jeremiah. But then Jordan Rodriguez, myself, Patrick Claybon are going to be there later in the week. We're going to have some awards previews. I love doing that. I'm going to have a special guest. Very excited to have Nick Wright. You got to come on, Nick, now that I'm saying your name, for our annual over-under draft. That is one of my favorite episodes of the entire season. So we are going daily throughout the next week, leading into our regular week 1 schedule, which you are going to be a huge part of, Shook. You're doing yeoman's work on the primetime game. So I will see you then, buddy.
Looking forward to it. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to the over-under show. That's one of the favorites.
It's the least talked about, most amazing streak in sports. 3 straight years I have gone undefeated on the over-under picks going into the season. We'll see if we can turn it into 4. That is it for today's NFL Daily. I was waiting for that music. Been honking too much at the end of like an hour and a half show. But these Sundays have been just delicious. Shook, we did it. It's the last one. 5 weeks. It's over. Football's back.